lower level of the cenotaph, we can see members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force just standing by, and just a member there just removing the floral arrangement from a nicely decorated table there. And so very soon we will be witnessing the arrival of the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, ONPC MP. The Prime Minister this morning will pay homage to the Right Excellent Sir Alexander Bustamante, and we're witnessing the arrival through the southern gate, and we see the outriders, were members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and as they make their way through the southern gate to come to a complete stop closest to the monument to the Right Excellent Alexander Bustamante, we will see the Prime Minister being greeted by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Denzel Thorpe, as well as Mrs. Marjorie Layden Curtin, Acting Executive Director of the JCDC. And we see the door opener moving closer to the vehicle carrying or transporting our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. He opens the door and the Prime Minister exits the vehicle. He is greeted by the Permanent Secretary and Mrs. Marjorie Layden Curtin. He will be escorted to the monument to the Right Excellent Alexander Bustamante by the protocol officer, and just walking closely by is a member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force who is carrying a beautiful arrangement, and this is what he takes a bow in honor, just to show his respect to the Right Excellent Alexander Bustamante, and he places the floral arrangement right there on a section of the monument to the Right Excellent Alexander Sir Bustamante. Steps back a few and pays his respect to this man who founded the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union, BITU, in 1938, and was also founder of the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP. And despite the work of all the other heroes and heroines, pay and working conditions were poor in the 1920s and 1930s, and he salutes the member of the JCF, and he enters the vehicle, and the Prime Minister will be rushed or whisked, for the want of a better word, to King's House this morning, where we will honor so many of our Jamaicans who have contributed greatly to nation building. The Prime Minister is now leaving the grounds of the National Heroes Park, and we have one final tribute to be paid this morning, and that tribute will be paid to the Right Excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey, and that will be done by the Honorable Stedman Fuller, CDJP, Custos of Kingston, representing the Governor General of Jamaica, His Excellency the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen, ONGC MG CD, and we will be witnessing that very soon. I want to make mention that 2022 is a significant year for Jamaica. It's our Diamond Jubilee, and we have made significant strides after 300 years of colonialism, and now we celebrate 60 years. Members of the diaspora, I should note, will also be recognized today at King's House for being goodwill ambassadors. And I want to make reference to Cheryl Lee Ralph, as she will be conferred with an honorary Order of Jamaica for her sterling contribution as an actress, cultural ambassador for Jamaica, and contribution to international film industry. Worthy to be acknowledged this morning. Beautiful shot there of the well-kept lawns of the National Heroes Park right here in Kingston, Jamaica. And just to give you some information on Marcus Mosiah Garvey, is that he was born August 17, and we're seeing just members of the Jamaica Defense Force standing guard right there at the front of the cenotaph. But Marcus Mosiah Garvey was born August 17, 1887 to Sarah Jane Richards and Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. in St. Anne, Jamaica, the Garden Parish. Now, Garvey grew up in poverty. He left school and started working at the age of 14. Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr. was his dad. I forgot to mention the seniority of his father, since he has been given the same name, but he would be Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. So Garvey took the UNIA worldwide in order to encourage self-government for all black people, oppose racial discrimination, and promote racial pride. He visited America in 1916 and inspired hope to blacks who faced horrors such as lynching by the Ku Klux Klan. What is interesting is that Marcus Garvey never actually visited the motherland, but he has had so much impact on leaders of the continent. So much impact. And that is really spectacular. So that's the shot of the monument to the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Garvey built large UNIA businesses and employed over 1,000 black people. And it must be noted that he believed that black people should return to their homeland and founded the Black Star Line Shipping Company in an effort to facilitate the return of blacks to Africa. Many of our Jamaicans, or many fellow Jamaicans, are of that understanding and that belief that we must return home to Africa. I'm wondering why, though, he just didn't visit the continent. What? And I think that is my question to him had he been alive today. And at the end of the day, we are thanking all our heroes for their struggles, for their fight for freedom, so that we can be who we are today. It's quite humid this morning, quite warm, and we see members of the JCCF, the Jamaica Combined Cadet Force, standing guard to the monuments to our national heroes. A few, with perspiration on their face. But we understand that it comes with the morning, it comes with the event, and it comes with the job. So, nice shot there of the monument to the Right Excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey, and a member of the JCF is holding the floral arrangement, which she will hand it to the Custis of Kingston, Honorable Stedman Fuller, CDJP, and he's representing the Governor General of Jamaica this morning, His Excellency, the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen. And we can see a nice shot there of the cenotaph. But Jamaica National Heroes Day today, a holiday celebrated on the third Monday of every October, is a time used to highlight the great contributions of our 6 national heroes and 1 heroine. Now, the first Heroes celebration was on Monday, October 20, 1969. I wasn't even born then. This was the year when a few of our national heroes were conferred with the Order of National Hero on October 20, to be specific. 1969, the recently deceased Norman Washington Manley and the first and only then living hero Alexander Bustamante were conferred with the Order of National Hero. Now, on the chief National Heroes Day, church services were held across the country to recognize the heroes. And we're witnessing the arrival of the Custis of Kingston, the Honorable Stedman Fuller, CDJP. He's representing the Governor General of Jamaica this morning, His Excellency, the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen. And he will be paying tribute this morning to the Right Excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey. And here's the vehicle with the Custis, and he will come to a complete stop closest to that monument, and he will be greeted by the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Denzel Thorpe, and Mrs. Marjorie Layden Curtin, Acting Executive Director of the JCDC, and a member of the JCF salutes the Custis. He's greeted by the Permanent Secretary and Mrs. Layden Curtin. Both are representing the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the Honorable Olivia Grange, OJCD MP, and is escorted to the monument to the Right Excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey by the Protocol Officer, and with him is a member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and she carries the beautiful arrangement that he will lay there at the monument to the Right Excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey. And so he pays his tribute, and he takes a good look at the bust of our first national hero, the Right Excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey. And he takes a bow just to respect the man for who he was and what he stands for today. He leaves the monument and he's having conversation with a member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. He will now make his way to the waiting vehicle, who will take the Custis to the lawns of King's House this morning. And Garvey died in London on June 10, 1940, at the age of 52, quite a very young man. And his body was returned to Jamaica in 1964 to be buried right here at the National Heroes Park. Garvey, as it was said earlier this morning, was named Jamaica's first national hero on November 15, 1964. And the words, "We are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind," was first expressed by Marcus Garvey and was later featured in Bob Marley's redemption song, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." And the Costas now departs the grounds of National Heroes Park, and all 7 national heroes, I would say 6 national heroes and 1 heroine, were extraordinary citizens. They inspired and continue to inspire and serve as ideals even for our youth today. They were scholars, they were businessmen, they were leaders, and they aided in the progress and freedom of Jamaica. And today, they are paid the tribute they so richly deserve. It was our pleasure to have come to you live from the National Heroes Park, the annual National Wreath laying ceremony. Happy Heroes Day, Jamaica. And we're going to be joining Stacey and Smith live on the lawns of King's House for the broadcast of the ceremony of investiture and presentation of National Honors and Awards 2022, where a total of 217 men and women will be recognized for their outstanding contributions to nation building through service in the various fields. The ceremony will be presided over by the Governor General, His Excellency the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen. Good morning.
House. We are here for the 2022 ceremony of investiture and presentation of the National Honors and Awards. And indeed, it is an honor to be here once again outside. We are indeed outside. We've been on a hiatus, if you will, for the last couple of years, due of course to the COVID-19 pandemic. But wow, it is wonderful. I can say even with the heat and it's a little balmy, but it is absolutely beautiful to be outside, to be here on the grounds of King's House to recognize and to honor all the recipients of this year's National Honors and Awards. You can see the Guard of Honor in place waiting for the arrival of all of our dignitaries You would have seen if you joined our broadcast earlier that we do have a team that's at Herose Park, National Herose Park, where there has been wreath laying for our national heroes. And we are getting ready, standing by to go into this morning's ceremony. We are going to be honoring 221 Jamaicans, and they're going to be receiving honors for contributions that they have made in a range of disciplines. And we're talking about the Order of Distinction, which we will have 30 persons who are going to be receiving the Order of Distinction. We're going to have 35 persons who will be receiving the Order of Distinction in the rank of officer. We'll have 6 persons receiving the Badge of Honor for Gallantry, and we will, of course, hear some amazing stories of bravery and courage of Jamaicans who have saved lives, and that's always a high point of this ceremony. We'll also have 30 persons receiving the Badge of Honor for long and faithful service, and of course we will have several members of our security forces or uniformed groups who will be receiving recognition for long and meritorious service. Among some of the more notable persons who will be receiving awards, we have Jazz Great Monty Alexander CD, Jamaica Defence Force Chief of Staff, Rear Admiral Antoinette Weems Gorman. We have Olympic and World Champions Shelly Ann Fraser Price, as well as Sharika Jackson. And we do know that the Prime Minister is arriving. He has arrived, and so we're getting ready for the arrival of the Governor General in short order. Just also to give you a couple of quick mentions of other persons who are going to be receiving awards: Professor of Neurophysiology Ronald Young, engineering professional Omar Sweeney, and world-renowned actress Cheryl Lee Ralph. So stay with us. We are broadcasting live on most stations locally. You can also see us on the JIS website, jis.gov.jm. We will, of course, be bringing you the sights and the sounds of this year's investiture. So we're standing by now for the Prime Minister, who is going to get a salute. Yeah, because it's fast.
The Most Honourable Andrew Holness, a member of the Order of the Nation, Privy Councillor, and Member of Parliament, and the Most Honourable Mrs. Juliet Holness, Member of Parliament. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, their excellencies will arrive shortly.
Just splendidly displayed. The Guard of Honor this morning is furnished by the Jamaica Regiment under the command of Major T.K. Farmer. The Guard of Honor is accompanied by the Jamaica Defence Force massed bands and the Jamaica Regiment Corps of Drums. We're anticipating the arrival of the Governor General, Sir Patrick Allen, and Lady Allen. And as is customary, as soon as they arrive, he will inspect the Guard of Honor, receive a royal salute, and shortly thereafter, the ceremony of investiture and presentation of national honors and awards will begin. You're watching the Prime Minister there, greeted by former Governor General Kenneth Hall. It truly is wonderful to be out today. National Honors and Awards was done virtually for the past 2 years. And so it is really wonderful for us to gather, for the dignitaries to come out, and for us to honor and recognize those Jamaicans who continue to give exemplary service to their country. If you're just joining us, this is the ceremony of investiture and presentation of National Honors and Awards 2022. We are on the grounds of King's House. We are in a covered tent, a little more comfortable than we have been over the years. This is the second time we are in a covered area for the awards ceremony. And indeed, it is good to be together. To the right of your screen, you're seeing the Most Honorable Juliet Holness greeting the Speaker of the House, Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, and before that she greeted the President of the Senate, Thomas Tavares Vincent. As I mentioned before, we will be honoring 221 Jamaicans this year who are in line to receive honors for their contribution across a range of disciplines. Among them, members of the uniformed services who will be honored, including 4 from the Jamaica Defence Force, 25 persons serving officers of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Once again to take your seats. Please take your seats and remember to put your phones on silent or turn them off. Thank you. Please take your seats.
And just now you heard the voice of Faye Ellington, or orator for this morning's proceedings, and you will hear her make the general announcements for the ceremonial event here. And we all make up part of this amazing team that will be bringing you this year's National Honors and Awards. Now, we've been talking about the National Honors and Awards, but how much do you know about the history of those awards or the process? What do the awards mean and who qualifies? Let's take a look with this quick feature from the JIS.
Order of National Hero, and that is the award given to those deemed to be national heroes. Each of the orders have a motto, and the motto designates the value. So for the national hero, the motto is, he built a city which had foundations, given the depth of the contribution. The next order in rank is the Order of the Nation, and this is the award given to Governors General and Prime Ministers, and that order is designated by the suffix "on" at the end of the names. The motto for the Order of the Nation is "One Nation under God."
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the Most Honorable Lady Allen.
The next rank
Lady Allen
order
will be
is
escorted
the
to her seat.
Order of Excellence. This is the order given
Acting
to
Commissioner of Police,
foreign dignitaries
seated by the Chief of
by the
State
Government of
Protocol.
Jamaica to recognize their value in bilateral relations. And the motto for the Order of Excellence is Excellence through Service.
The Order of Merit is ranked next, and this may be conferred upon any citizen of Jamaica or distinguished citizen of another country.
His Excellency
who
the
has
Governor
achieved
General has arrived
international
on the
distinction.
ceremonial
A
grounds.
member
His
of
Excellency will be given a royal salute and will inspect the Guard of Honor. The Governor General is escorted to the saluting dais by the Chief of Defence Staff, attended by Lieutenant Colonel Morton B. Stewart, Commanding Officer, the 4th Battalion, the Jamaica Regiment, and Major Dwayne Hill, aide-de-camp to the Governor General.
royal salute, the Governor General will be invited to inspect the Guard of Honor.
Governor General will now be asked for his permission and give him the permission to inspect the Guard of Honor. Please be seated.
Having been invited, the Governor General now moves to inspect the Guard of Honor, and following that there will be another royal salute, and he will then make his way into the ceremonial area for the start of these proceedings.
During the inspection of the Guard of Honor, a very favorite of the military band of the JDF will be played, and that is Kingdom Fight.
Today's Guard of Honor is furnished by the 4th Battalion of the Jamaica Regiment under the command of Major Terence K. Palmer. The Guard of Honor is accompanied by the Jamaica Defence Force massed bands and the Jamaica Regiment Corps of Drums, conducted by Warrant Officer Class 2 Annie Taylor. The Director of Music is Lieutenant Raphael Salazar. To the left of the Governor General, you're seeing two officers standing up front. They are the color MCs, Captain Melvin Williams and Captain Marlon Saunders. The parade regimental Sergeant Major is Warrant Officer Class 1 Richard Hines. Really resplendent in their ceremonial uniforms this morning. Those brilliant images brought to you by the production team. And of course, that piece of music you're listening to is Lignum Vitae, played during the inspection. Governor General being escorted back to the saluting dais. To his left, Rear Admiral Antoinette Reeves Gorman.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the royal salute. Please be seated.
The Governor General in the presentation area. Our guests are invited to be seated. We do have an almost full house here this morning. So many friends and family members of our award recipients have come out to show their support. No doubt very proud of their relatives and friends who are given this special honor this morning. Who are awaiting the arrival of the Governor General, who will be greeted by fanfare.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of His Excellency the Governor General, the Most Honourable Sir Patrick Allen, Member of the Order of the Nation, Knight, Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael of St. George, Commander of the Order of Distinction, Knight of Grace of the Most Venerable Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Just now. But members of the JDF supporting this morning's ceremony and presentation of national awards are falling into place. The markers are taking their positions, and we will begin momentarily.
His Excellency the Governor General, acting in accordance with the provisions of the National Honours and Awards Act, has been pleased on the advice of the Prime Minister to give orders for the conferment of the Order of Jamaica upon the following persons with effect from the 6th day of August, 2022. Mr. Monty Alexander, a member of the Order of Distinction to the rank of Commander, for sterling contribution to the promotion of Jamaican music and the jazz genre interpretations globally. Mr. Monty Alexander is unable to be with us this morning. Posthumous, Mrs. Joan Isabel Duncan, for distinguished services to the banking sector and the development of the money market in particular. The insignia will be received by her daughter, Mrs. Donna Duncan Scott.
And you see a very emotional Donna Duncan Scott going to receive that posthumous award for Joan Duncan, considered a pioneer in the Jamaica money market. She had a simple but very ambitious dream to start a company where any Jamaican could walk in off the street, take a few $100s from their pocket and invest it. And of course, the rest is history. She founded the Jamaica Money Market Brokers Limited in 1992, becoming after that Jamaica's biggest money market trader.
The Honourable Olivia Atavia Babsy Grange, a member of the Order of Distinction of the rank of Commander and Member of Parliament, for sterling contribution to cultural development and political administration in Jamaica.
The Honourable Olivia Grange, Babsy Grange, currently serves as the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport and has been a Member of Parliament for St. Catharines Central since 1997. A long career as a cultural activist working at the grassroots level in developing and managing talent. I dare say one of Jamaica's most popular politicians, and you can hear the rousing applause for the Honourable Olivia Babsy Grange.
The Honourable Mr. Justice Retired Carl Stanhope Harrison, a member of the Order of Distinction of the rank of Commander, for distinguished service to the legal profession and the advancement of electoral democracy in Jamaica.
Retired Justice Harrison is currently chairman of the Legal Committee of the Electoral Commission. He was called to the bar in 1976 and has had a long and distinguished career. He is the first graduate of the Norman Manley Law School to be appointed Crown Counsel in the Attorney General's chambers. An author of many books and a tutor at Norman Manley Law School. Really outstanding member of the judiciary.
Mrs. Rita Humphreys Lewin, a member of the Order of Distinction of the rank of Commander, for sterling contribution to the financial sector, in particular the stockbroking industry.
Rita Humphreys Lewin has been at the forefront of Jamaica's stockbroking industry for more than 45 years. She's the first woman to chair the Jamaica Stock Exchange and the first woman to chair a stock exchange in the Caribbean. During her tenure, she spearheaded the establishment of the Jamaica Central Securities Depository Limited in 1998 and the development of electronic trading on the JSE in 2000. She founded Barita Investments Limited in 1977, which is the oldest stock brokerage firm in Jamaica. She is a giant in the financial sector, a true pioneer, breaking the glass ceiling for Jamaican as well as Caribbean women.
Professor Maureen Elaine Sams-Vaughan, a member of the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander, for pioneering research, clinical work, and policy development in the field of child health, child development, and behavior.
Professor Sams-Vaughan is known locally, regionally, and internationally for her seminal research, clinical work and policy development in the field of child health, development and behavior. She's also an advocate for the well-being of all children, especially those at the early childhood level and those with disabilities. She was appointed the first chairman of the Early Childhood Commission, and under her leadership, the Commission developed and implemented Jamaica's first cross-sectoral national strategic plan for early childhood development. Truly a pioneer in her field.
Mrs. Audrey Vivian Cheryl, a member of the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander and Justice of the Peace, for distinguished contribution to the public service.
Mrs. Cheryl is the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. She also served as Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education in 2008 and the Ministry of Transport, Works and Housing in 2011. From 2004 to 2008, Mrs. Sewell was the Principal Director of the Justice Training Institute. She has served on several boards, including that of the Student Loan Bureau, National Council on Education, Overseas Examination Commission, the UWI Technical Advisory Committee, and Jamaica Customs. An ardent and involved member of the North Street Seventh-day Adventist Church in Kingston, Mrs. Sewell is no doubt a public servant extraordinaire.
Professor Alvin George Wint, a member of the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander, for distinguished service to the development of public and private institutions and academia in Jamaica.
Professor Wint has a strong track record of national service. He's an emeritus professor of international business at the University of the West Indies, where he also served as Pro-Vice Chancellor. He has provided advisory and oversight services to numerous public, private and educational institutions in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and to governments of countries in Africa, Asia and Latin America, as well as to multilateral institutions such as the United Nations, the World Bank Group, and the Inter-American Development Bank.
And now, the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander. His Excellency the Governor General, acting in accordance with the provisions of the National Honours and Awards Act, has been pleased, on the advice of the Prime Minister, to give orders for the conferment of the Order of Distinction upon the following persons with effect from the 6th day of August, 2022. For appointment as members of the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander. Mr. Everton Wesley Anderson.
Everton Anderson.
Dr. Jacqueline Antoinette Bisesa Mackenzie. Dr. Warren Fabian Blake. Mr. Ransford Graham, King's Counsel. Reverend Astor Kirkpatrick Carlisle. Dr. Kwame Sinumedu-Dawes. Mr. Vernon Winston Davidson, and Mr. Lloyd Winston Diston Sr. Mr. Everton Wesley Anderson for public service, in particular, the development of healthcare.
Everton Anderson is Chief Executive Officer of the National Health Fund and an ex officio member of the NHF Board of Management since January 2013. Under his leadership, the NHF has been awarded the Public Sector Corporate Governance Award for 2016 to 2017 financial year.
Dr. Jacqueline Antoinette Bisesa Mackenzie for outstanding public service in the field of health.
Most Jamaicans know Dr. Bisesa Mackenzie as the picture of calm authority at those frequent media briefings during the COVID crisis. She has 25 years of experience in the healthcare sector in Jamaica and is the Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Dr. Warren Fabian Blake for contribution to medicine and as a team doctor in national sports.
Dr. Blake is a distinguished Kingston College Old Boy and former president of the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association, the J3As. He's a consultant orthopedic
Mr.
surgeon.
Ransford Graham, King's Counsel, for contribution to the legal profession and public service.
Ransford Graham is a government senator and former Attorney General of Jamaica. He was admitted to practice in 1988 and was a partner at Livingston, Alexander and Levy before being appointed Attorney General in 2010.
Reverend Astor Kirkpatrick Carlyle, for contribution to religion and community development.
Reverend Carlyle is senior pastor of the Webster Memorial United Church in Kingston, which at over 1,200 members is the largest congregation within the United Church in Jamaica and the
Dr.
Cayman
Kwame
Islands.
Senu Neville Dawes, for contribution to the literary arts as poet and a writer.
Ghanaian-born Jamaican Dr. Kwame Dawes is a world-renowned poet and prolific writer who has authored more than 30 books of poetry, several books of fiction and non-fiction, and numerous plays.
Mr. Vernon Washington Davidson, for outstanding contribution to journalism.
Vernon Davidson is a veteran journalist whose career in journalism began in 1981 as a sub-editor reporter at the Jamaica Daily News.
Mr. Lloyd Winston Diston Sr., for outstanding voluntary service and contribution to the banking industry.
Mr. Distant has 53 years of unwavering service to the Kiwanis movement in Jamaica. As a chartered member of the Kiwanis Club of Downtown Kingston, he's one of the longest serving members and has created several firsts for the movement.
The Honourable Mr. Justice David Martin Alberga Fraser, Dr. Maurice Valentine Guy, Professor Colin Arlington Giles, Mr. Jeffrey McGowan Hall, Mr. Anthony Mark Deno Hart, Ms. Sharika Jackson, Mr. Alok Kumar Jain, Dr. Beulah Grace Binder Haynes. The Honourable Mr. Justice David Martin Alberga Fraser, for contribution to the legal profession and the judiciary.
Justice Fraser has performed admirably as a judge of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. He also served as a prosecutor and a tutor at the Normal Manley Law School. Justice Fraser has also served in the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Division of the Commonwealth Secretariat.
Dr. Maurice Valentine Guy, Member of Parliament, for services to governance in public service and the medical profession.
Dr. Maurice Guy has been the elected Member of Parliament for Central St. Mary since 2002 and is the current chairman of Region 2 of the People's National Party.
Professor Colin Arlington Giles, for contribution to the field of academia.
Professor Giles has led a successful career as a lecturer, multidisciplinary scientist and academic administrator for more than 30 years.
Mr. Jeffrey McGowan Hall, for contribution to investment and commerce.
Jeffrey Hall is Chief Executive Officer at Jamaica Producers Group and has served in this capacity since 2007. He's credited with leading a turnaround of the group through diversification and growth.
Mr. Anthony Mark Deno Hart, for contribution to entrepreneurship and for public service.
Mr. Hart began his career at the Hart Group of Companies in 1982, eventually becoming Chairman and Chief Executive Officer in 1997.
Ms. Sharika Jackson, for exceptional achievement in sports of track and field athletics at the national, world championship and Olympic levels.
Sharika Jackson is the fastest woman alive and second fastest woman of all time in the 200 meters. Ahead of the 2022 World Athletics Championships in Eugene, Oregon, Ms. Jackson became the national champion in both the 100 meters and 200 meters. An exceptional athlete, if there ever was one.
Mr. Alok Kumar Jain for service to the accountancy profession, including adoption and implementation of international financial reporting standards and public service.
Mr. Jain is a chartered accountant and a chartered financial analyst charter holder. He serves as a consultant to the Prime Minister, advising on various matters.
Dr. Grace Linda Haynes for contribution to medicine in the area of blood transfusion services.
Dr. Haynes is a retired medical doctor, consultant hematologist and oncologist. Her work impacting the lives of thousands of Jamaicans for more than 60 years.
Dr. Sandra Lisa Lindsay, Mr. Stuart Philip Horton McConnell, Mr. Omar Hanif McFarlane Sweeney, Ms. Darlene Marie Morrison, Mr. Richard Ron Pandui, Dr. Garth Anthony Rattray, the Honourable Miss Justice Nicole Adrienne Simmons, Mr. Gordanos Nenumel Gordon Tuwani, Dr. Sandra Lisa Lindsay for contribution to public health and the campaign against COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy.
Dr. Lindsay came to prominence on December 14, 2020, when she volunteered to be the first person to receive the COVID-19 vaccine outside of clinical trials in the US. Her example influenced persons who were vaccine hesitant and served to increase the numbers of vaccinated persons, both in the US and here in Jamaica.
Mr. Stuart Philip Horton McConnell for contribution to the business and agriculture industry.
Stuart McConnell entered the agricultural sector in the 1970s as a farm manager at Worthy Park Estate, one of Jamaica's top producers of sugarcane for many years. His association with the United Estates Limited led to its transformation from a sugarcane factory to Tradewinds Citrus Limited, carriers of the True Juice brand, of course.
Mr. Omar Hanif McFarlane Sweeney for contribution to public service, in particular, Jamaica Social Investment Fund.
Omar Sweeney is the managing director of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, where he has portfolio responsibility for the execution of several impactful social intervention and infrastructural projects within vulnerable communities across Jamaica.
Ms. Darlene Marie Morrison for public service in fiscal, economic and debt management.
Mrs. Morrison was permanently appointed Jamaica's Financial Secretary in November 2018. She has responsibility for the formulation and management of the country's budget and fiscal policy.
Mr. Richard Rowan Pandui for contribution to the manufacturing sector.
Richard Pandui has more than 20 years of experience covering manufacturing, distribution management, change management and leadership. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the separate group of companies.
Dr. Antonio Rattray for contribution to medicine, public education and voluntary service.
Dr. Rattray is a general medical practitioner with more than 40 years of experience. During the height of the COVID pandemic, he appeared regularly on television and radio programs to provide information to the public.
The Honourable Miss Justice Nicole Adrienne Simmons for contribution to the legal profession and to the judiciary.
The Honourable Miss Justice Nicole Adrienne Simmons has dedicated herself to the development of Jamaica's judiciary for 2 decades. She has helped to significantly improve the flow of cases during her time as Registrar of the Supreme Court of Judicature.
Mr. Gordadas Nenumel Gordon Tuwani, a member of the Order of Distinction of the rank of officer, for contribution to real estate development and philanthropy.
Mr. Tuwani is an Indian immigrant who transformed his life from refugee to business magnate. He is one of the largest holders of private property across Jamaica, business savvy, and that reflects in the many properties that he has leased for commerce.
And now, Mrs. Esther Althea Tyson, the Honourable Clifford Everald Errol Warmington, Professor Mona K. Weber, Rear Admiral Antoinette Sandra Lee Weems Gorman, Dr. Maureen Elfrida Williams, and Professor Emeritus Ronald Edward Young. Mrs. Esther Althea Tyson, for service to education.
Mrs. Tyson has long believed in the transformative power of education, having spent more than 30 years helping to nurture the nation's children. She served as vice principal at St. Andrew High School for Girls before moving on to become principal at Arden High in 2000.
The Honourable Clifford Everald Errol Warmington, Member of Parliament, for service in representational politics for over 50 years and as a Member of Parliament for 20 consecutive years.
Mr. Warmington is the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation with responsibility for works. He's been a Member of Parliament for the St. Catherine Southwestern constituency since 2002 and has been in politics for more than 50 years.
Professor Mona K. Weber, for contribution to preserving and protecting the marine and coastal environment of Jamaica.
Professor Weber has made the protection and preservation of the island's coastal ecology her life's work. For over 30 years, she has contributed her expertise as a
Rear
marine
Admiral
biologist.
Antoinette Sandra Lee Weems Gorman, a member of the Order of Distinction of the rank of Officer and Justice of the Peace, for distinguished service to the Jamaica Defence Force.
Rear Admiral Weems Gorman is the first woman to serve as Chief of Defence Staff in the Jamaica Defence Force. Her nearly 3 decades of service has been characterized by groundbreaking achievements.
Dr. Elfrida Williams, for contribution to medicine in the area of obstetrics and gynecology.
Dr. Williams has dedicated more than 50 years of service to the field of medicine in both the public and private sectors.
Professor Emeritus Ronald Edward Young, for contribution to the field of physiology with emphasis on neurophysiology.
Professor Young is Emeritus Professor of Human and Comparative Physiology at the University of the West Indies, a widely respected educator. He has made significant impact with his research and teaching of
Your
medical sciences through his 50
years. May I have your
years.
permission to bring forward at this time an honorary member of the Order of Jamaica, Miss Cheryl Lee Ralph, for sterling contribution as an actress, cultural ambassador for Jamaica, and contribution to the international film industry.
Cheryl Lee Ralph was born in the United States to Stanley Ralph and Jamaican mother Ivy Ralph, and she is a great cultural ambassador, an acclaimed show business professional with an impressive body of work in film, television, and the Broadway stage. She won this year the Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series at the 74th Primetime Emmy Awards for her starring role as Barbara Howard on the ABC sitcom Abbott Elementary. She became the first black woman to win that award in 35 years. Her credits also include originating and creating the role of Adina Jones in the landmark musical Dreamgirls, which earned her a Tony Award nomination and a Drama Desk Award nomination for Best Actress.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And now, some entertainment. Jamaican musician Giovanni Williams has been featured for Heritage Month celebrations through folk music arrangements and more recently, a medley of songs by Toots Hibbert in tribute to the reggae legend. This idealist, with grand plans of reviving the classical music scene in Jamaica, believes that though Jamaica is the bedrock of reggae music, and here I quote, "We have a rich classical music heritage as well, and there is absolutely no reason why we can't have an orchestra at the highest level," end of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Giovanni Williams performing "I Saw My Land in the Morning" and "I Pledge My Heart." Thank you, Giovanni. Giovanni Williams, thank you.
Williams. Standing by now to go into the second set of awards in this morning's ceremony, the Order of Distinction in the rank of officer. We see the markers going into place and the award recipients moving into position, and we will begin momentarily.
His Excellency, the Governor-General, acting in accordance with the provisions of the National Honors and Awards Act, has been pleased, on the advice of the Prime Minister, to give orders for the conferment of the Order of Distinction upon the following persons with effect from the 6th day of August, 2022, for appointment as members of the Order of Distinction in the rank of officer. Dr. Audia Jean Barnett, Dr. Amina Iselin Blackwood Meeks, beg your pardon, Colonel Anil Alexander Bogle, Mr. Claude Bryan, Mr. Jeffrey Ethan Agent Sasco Campbell, Mr. Michael Anthony Clark, Mrs. Madge Adele Coombs Bryce, and Mr. Basil O'Connor Dawkins. Dr. Audia Jean Barnett for contribution to the fields of agriculture development, scientific research, and community service.
Dr. Barnett is a former executive director of the Scientific Research Council, an institution she led for more than 8 years.
Dr. Amina Iselin Blackwood Meeks, Badge of Honor for Meritorious Service for contribution to the development of the literary arts in the Jamaican culture.
A renowned cultural activist, author, and educator, Dr. Blackwood Meeks has worked with unending fervor towards advancing the art of storytelling
Colonel
throughout the
O'Neill
Caribbean.
Alexander Bogle for service to the Jamaica Defense Force.
Colonel Bogle has served the JDF for more than 20 years, holding numerous appointments and performing with distinction. He has received several awards, including the Medal of Honor for Meritorious
Mr.
Service.
Claude Bryan for contribution to sports
service.
in the area of track and field.
Mr. Bryan is one of the top sports agents in the world in the area of track and field. Founder of the On Track Management Company in Atlanta, Georgia. His company has represented and furthered the careers of many local talents, including
Mr.
Veronica
Jeffrey
Campbell-Brown.
Ethan Agent Sasco Campbell for outstanding contribution to music, philanthropy, and positive pro-social message to youth.
Rousing applause for Jeffrey Campbell, aka Agent Sasco, one of dancehall's winning musical talents.
Mr. Michael Anthony Clark for contribution to sports in the field of track and field.
Michael Clark is a world-class track and field coach who has 17 ISA Boys and Girls National Athletics Championship titles. He's also an Olympic and World Championship level coach.
Mrs. Madge Adele Coombs Bryce for 53 years of service to the agricultural sector.
Mrs. Coombs Bryce has given yeoman service to the Jamaica Agricultural Society. While her primary duty was that of a personnel officer, she also served in the Produce Marketing Center. Mrs. Coombs Bryce has oversight of the shipping of Blue Mountain coffee in barrels from Moy Hall Coffee Factory to Tokyo in Japan. 53 years of service to the agriculture sector. wonderful to see
And
Mrs.
now,
Bryce
Mr.
receive
Basil
that award
O'Connor
this
Dawkins.
morning.
Warrant Officer Class 1 Alwyn Roy Forbes. Bishop Christine Marie Gooden Bengucci. Posthumous Award, Mr. Sean St. Aubin Gray. Dr. Myrna Haig Bradshaw. Posthumous Award, Mr. Leonard Percival Howell. Mr. Brandis Denham Jolly. Mr. Basil O'Connor Dawkins for contribution to the creative industry, in particular theatre.
For almost 50 years, Basil Dawkins has been captivating the hearts of Jamaicans at home and in the diaspora through his plays. Some of the more popular plays, Champagne and Sky Juice, Feminine Justice.
Warrant Officer Class 1 Alwyn Roy Forbes for service to the Jamaica Defence Force.
Warrant Officer Class 1 Forbes is a serving member of the JDF with close to 26 years of service. He spent 10 years in youth development where he played an integral role in transforming new recruits into servicemen and women.
Bishop Christine Marie Gooden Bengucci for contribution to religion and chaplaincy. Posthumous Award for Mr. Sean St. Aubin Gray, Justice of the Peace, for exemplary and committed service to the public sector and community development. The insignia will be received by Ms. Kamei Garrix.
Ms. Garrix receiving that award for Mr. Gray, who began his career in the public service at the Ministry of Transport and Works in the 1990s. His expertise took him to the Office of the Cabinet, where he was appointed Principal Director. Also serving in the Office of the Prime Minister and the Management Institute for National Development, MIND. The Governor General there sharing
Dr. Myrna Haig Bradshaw for contribution to the arts, especially in the field of music.
Myrna Haig Bradshaw is often referred to as Jamaica's first Lady of Jazz. Her career began in the mid-1960s, and she has appeared on stage with musicians such as Ernie Ranglin, Kenny Baker, Monty Alexander, Dean Fraser, among others.
Posthumous Award, Mr. Leonard Percival Howell, for pioneering the development of the Rastafari philosophy. The insignia will be received by his son, Mr. Billy Howell.
Billy Howell there receiving that award for Leonard Howell, the first Rasta, as he is described as the most charismatic and successful of the first generation of Rastafari leaders. He's best known for establishing the first communal Rastafari settlement, Pinnacle, in Sligoville in St. Catherine.
Mr. Brandis Denham Jolly, for contribution to the Jamaican diaspora in Canada and for philanthropy. Mr. Jolly is unable to be present this morning. George Samuel Johnson is now receiving his award.
Mr.
Justice
Johnson.
of the Peace for contribution to the tourism sector and philanthropy.
And you see George Johnson walking off stage just now. Spent almost all his
Brigadier
life working in the
Markland
tourism
Aloysius
industry.
Lloyd. Mr. Gul Arjandas Mansakani. Mr. Mark Archer Melville. Posthumous Award for Miss Jean Elaine Nelson. Mr. Kenrick Randolph Lord Creator Patrick. Colonel Murphy George Price. Mr. Anthony Patrick Chips Richards, and Mr. Garfield Anthony Rowe. Brigadier Markland Aloysius Lloyd for service to the Jamaica Defence Force.
Brigadier Lloyd has dedicated 21 years of combined service to the JDF, first joining in February 1996 and later re-enlisting in August 2010. He currently serves as the Force Executive Officer.
Mr. Gul Arjandas Mansukani, Justice of the Peace, for contribution to entrepreneurship and social development.
Mr. Mansukani is Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Pavilion Jewelers in Kingston, which has been in operation since 1986. Over the years, he has made several charitable donations to both government and non-governmental organizations.
Mr. Mark Archer Melville for contribution to the tourism sector.
Mr. Melville is Chief Executive Officer for Choca Caribbean Adventures Group, which has grown from a single tour providing their signature horseback ride and swim to now offering over 68 nature adventure destination experiences through Jamaica.
For Miss Jean Elaine Nelson for contribution to Jamaica national women's football teams. The insignia will be collected by her cousin, Ms. Christine Lee Sang.
Miss Lee Sang there receiving that award for Miss Jean Nelson, though not a starter on the field. Ms. Nelson was a top striker for the development of Jamaica's football.
Mr. Henrik Randolph, Lord Creator Patrick, for contribution to the development of Jamaican music and for community service.
Mr. Patrick, popularly known as Lord Creator, is a Trinidadian-born singer who made Jamaica his home in 1962. He describes himself as a ballad singer, noting that his music was influenced by ska, which was popular at the time. Among his first recordings done in Jamaica were Remember Ma and Pa, Evening News, and Independent Jamaica, which became a #1 hit song the year it was recorded.
Colonel Murphy George Price, Medal of Honor for Meritorious Service and Justice of the Peace for service to the Jamaica Defence Force.
Colonel Price has served the Jamaica Defence Force for more than 27 years as a commissioned officer. He has held several significant command appointments, including as infantry platoon commander, company commander, detachment commander, and battalion commander. He's now the brigade commander for the Jamaica Regiment.
Mr. Anthony Patrick Chips Richards, Badge of Honor for Meritorious Service, for notable contribution to the promotion of Jamaican music internationally.
Mr. Richards has played a pivotal role in reggae music, receiving the recognition and appreciation it does around the world. As the then marketing manager for Trojan Records, Mr. Richards pressed the
Mr.
BBC
Garfield
National
Anthony Rowe,
Radio.
Justice of the Peace, for contribution to education and for the promotion and protection of Jamaican heritage.
Mr. Rowe has dedicated 28 years of service to education through his alma mater, the Accompong Town Primary and Basic School.
And now we continue the Order of Distinction Officer class. Mr. Douglas Anthony Richard Russell, Miss Verna Joy Elizabeth Scott, Mr. Stanley Carver Skeen, Mr. Lloyd Barnes Smith, Colonel Wallace George Sterling, Mr. John Randolph Swaby, Dr. Marcia Anne-Marie Thelwell Reed, Mr. Robert John White, Mr. Douglas Anthony Richard Russell for service in the field of sports, particularly tennis.
Mr. Russell has dedicated much of his life to the sport of tennis. He became the youngest national tennis champion at the age of 16 and is the only Jamaican to qualify and win matches at all Grand Slam championships between 1964 and 1972.
Ms. Verna Joy Elizabeth Scott for service to the office of His Excellency the Governor General and staff and the public service.
Ms. Scott is Special Advisor to the Governor General, His Excellency Sir Patrick Allen. She joined the staff at King's House in 2009.
Mr. Stanley Carver Skeen, Justice of the Peace, for contribution to education, poor relief and community development.
Mr. Skeen has given over 40 years of service to education, spending 33 years at Mayday High School in Manchester.
Mr. Lloyd Barnes Smith for service in the fields of business, media, and community development.
Lloyd B. Smith's involvement in local media spans 45 years. He's a political commentator and the chief executive officer of the Western Mirror newspaper. He's also the longest contributing columnist to the Jamaica Observer.
Colonel Wallace George Sterling, Justice of the Peace for the promotion and protection of Jamaican heritage.
Colonel Sterling is the longest sitting Maroon colonel in Jamaica, having been selected as leader of the Maroon Town community in September 1995.
Mr. John Randolph Swaby for pioneering work in film, technical production, promotion and development of the entertainment sector.
Mr. Swaby has been the partner of choice for leading entertainment event producers at home and throughout the Caribbean region for decades.
Dr. Marcia Anne-Marie Thelwell-Reid for contribution to academia, public health and health technology.
Dr. Thelwell-Reid is an associate professor of public health at the University of Technology, who has given 39 years of sterling service to the field.
Mr. Robert John White, Badge of Honor for long and faithful service, for contribution to the development of inner city communities and philanthropy.
Mr. White started the San Mera Foundation in 2016 and through it has positively impacted over 300 lives from inner city communities such as Waterhouse, Painland, Majesty Gardens, Olympic Gardens and Cassia Park.
Mrs. Nayana Sania Williams, Mr. Lloyd Williams and Mrs. Geneva Veronica Williams Hibbert.
We are supported this morning with the expertise of Antoinette Aiken, who you see on the top left-hand corner of your box for those who are hearing impaired.
Mrs. Nayana Sania Williams for entrepreneurship and philanthropy.
Mrs. Williams is the founder of Lifespan Spring Water Company. The company employs more than 50 persons in Portland. She invests in her staff and members of the wider community and receiving
Mr. Lloyd
recognition
Williams
this
for
morning.
service in the field of journalism, in particular investigative journalism.
Lloyd Williams began his career at the Daily Gleaner in 1960 as a trainee copy editor before becoming a court reporter and later a general reporter.
Mrs. Geneva Veronica Williams Hibbert for dedicated public service and academia.
Mrs. Hibbert is the Vice President and Chief Operations and Projects Officer at
Your
the University of
Excellency, sir,
Technology,
may I
Jamaica.
have your permission to have somebody who just arrived in the island from New Zealand, who has done outstanding work for this country, accept her award at this time. Mrs. Shelley Ann Fraser Price, a member of the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander, for outstanding performance in the field of athletics at the international level.
And a very warm welcome for Shelley Ann Fraser Price, who's captured the hearts of many, beginning as far back as 2008 at the Beijing Olympics, when she became the first Caribbean woman to win the 100 meters. Since then, the pocket rocket, as she is called, or the mummy rocket, has consistently lit up the track as a 5-time individual world champion and a 3-time Olympic gold medalist at the World Athletics Championships. Shelley Ann is one of the most decorated athletes in history, winning 10 gold and 4 silver medals. In 2013, she was voted the IAAF World Athlete of the Year.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you. Superb music, amazing young people, a great Jamaican choir. The Jamaica Youth Chorale, JYC, is committed to the highest standards in the performance of choral music. Founded in December 2008, the JYC quickly emerged as one of the nation's leading choirs, being featured in many local, regional, and international publications, productions, and events to critical acclaim. This includes representing Jamaica at the World Choir Games Championship level in South Africa, features on the British Broadcasting Corporation, Caribbean Passport, the Langolene International Musical Ice Tetford in the UK. The JYC has released an album called Spirit, Spirituals and Sacred Works by Jamaican composers, and has an annual concert season and recital. An ensemble from the JYC now performs Noel Dexter's One Thing Leads to Another. And here it is led by Sharona Forrester.
Come up by any high table. Me trust the Lord and me learn how to pray. And me work hard as me is able. And just do good to me neighbor each day. Me start out life with little buying and selling. It was so fast, oh Lord, it couldn't stop. And from that small and humble beginning, me move right up to own me own shop. One thing leads to another, so when fear and courage is gone, me just look over me shoulder, see where me coming from, and I find the strength to press on. The shop is stretch and taking the post office, and the shopkeeper don't post mistress me dear. And very soon I became a choir mistress and lead the choir singing loud and clear. Hallelujah. I started lending money like a banker to even those who don't call me them friends. But I just thank God and praise me Savior, who bless me that I have money feeling. One thing leads to another, so when fear and courage is gone, me just look over me shoulder, see where me coming from, and I find the strength to press on. And all the blessings will reach me, I share them, and the shop back turn in a big Jamal class. So from shopkeeper, post mistress and banker, I am big teacher and I'm moving up fast. Believe me, one thing lead to another, and it is plain for everyone to see. And I am very, very proud to tell you that last week I was made a JP. One thing leads to another, so when fear and courage is gone, me just look over me shoulder, see where me coming from, and I find the strength to press on. So I am happy, I am never complaining, for when life opened up before me a door, I just thank God as I try to pass through it, but that door leads me to many more. So day by day me just a spread out and prosper, right here on this very spot. And I just thank God for His guidance, and I thank Him for what I got. One thing leads to another, so when fear and courage is gone, me just look over me shoulder, see where me coming from, and I find the strength to press on. One thing leads to another, so when fear and courage is gone, me just look over me shoulder, see where me coming from. Hi, and I find the strength to press on.
Sharona Forrester leading the Jamaica Youth Chorale in that spirited presentation done by Noel Dexter. One thing leads to another.
We're standing by now for the next set of awards, the Badge of Honor for Gallantry, where I promise you, you will hear some amazing stories of courage and selflessness that led to the preservation of life.
His Excellency, the Governor General, acting in accordance with the provisions of the National Honours and Awards Act, has been pleased, on the advice of the Prime Minister, to award the Badge of Honour to the following persons with effect from the 6th day of August 2022. The Badge of Honour for Gallantry. The presentation of the Badge of Honour for Gallantry to Mr. Jeffrey Lloyd Boyne. On July 31, 2020, sometime after 7 p.m., Mr. Boyne noticed a young boy fighting to stay afloat in crocodile-infested waters in Bridgeport, St. Catherine. After several failed attempts to call out to the boy, Mr. Boyne jumped into the water and rescued him. It was later discovered that the boy was hearing impaired. For exemplary heroism in saving the life of a young boy from drowning, Mr. Jeffrey Lloyd Boyne.
Jeffrey Boyne is referred to as the Portmore hero. Well-deserved moniker for this man who risked his own life to save that of a hearing-impaired boy. No doubt a very proud moment for Jeffrey and his family.
Mr. Junior Georgia Clark. On the afternoon of Thursday, March 10, 2022, Mr. Clark, while transporting co-workers, observed unusual activities taking place in a Toyota Probox taxi in traffic ahead of him at the intersection of Mountain View Avenue and Tucker Avenue. Mr. Clark saw a young schoolgirl as the lone passenger inside the vehicle, being pulled by her neck by the driver. He also noticed that one of her legs was hanging out of the vehicle while it was still in motion. With quick thinking, he engaged in a high-speed chase, following every turn while blowing his horn to warn the taxi driver that his plan had been discovered. After several failed attempts to throw off his pursuer, the taxi driver flung the girl from the taxi on Mountain View Avenue. Mr. Clark and his co-workers then took the girl to the police station where the matter was reported and the girl was handed over to the police. For his exemplary bravery in preventing the abduction of a young schoolgirl and for his life-saving action, Mr. Junior Georgia Clark.
Now this is what selflessness looks like. This is what being your brother's keeper looks like. Mr. Junior Clark receiving a well-deserved Badge of Honor for Gallantry for saving a young schoolgirl whose family, I am sure, will forever be grateful.
Mr. Junior Clark received critical assistance from 3 work colleagues traveling with him in the vehicle who supported his action and also rendered assistance to the victim. Ms. Tanisha Latoya Brown, for her exemplary bravery in preventing the abduction of a young schoolgirl and for her life-saving action. Ms. Tanisha Latoya Brown.
Miss Brown is one of the passengers who was in that vehicle with Junior Clark that afternoon, receiving an award for her support.
Hillary Sutherland, for her exemplary bravery in preventing the abduction of a young schoolgirl and for her life-saving action. Miss Ashley Hillary Sutherland.
I cannot imagine what might have gone through their minds as they followed that pro box, determined that they would do what was necessary, whatever they could, to save the life of that young schoolgirl that afternoon of March 10.
Ms. Sedisha Anna Marie Williams for her exemplary bravery in preventing the abduction of a young schoolgirl and for her life-saving action. Ms. Sedisha Anna Marie Williams.
Ms. Williams is another passenger who was in that vehicle that fateful afternoon. That vehicle driven by Junior Clark that helped to save the life of that
Mr.
schoolgirl.
Winston Anthony Thorpe. On February 15, 2022, Mr. Thorpe and a companion saw a policeman lying on the ground. He approached the policeman to discover that he'd been shot the day before and had life-threatening injuries. Mr. Thorpe and his companion contacted the police station and stayed with the injured policeman until help arrived. For exemplary heroism in saving the life of a police officer, Mr. Winston Anthony Thorpe.
Winston Thorpe is indeed a modern-day hero. A good Samaritan, if you will, who didn't say, this is not my business, I'm staying in my lane and I'm going to see and blind and hear and deaf, but stepped up to the plate to save someone's
Josiah
life.
Wright. On February 15, 2022, Mr. Wright and a companion saw a policeman lying on the ground. He approached the policeman to discover that he'd been shot the day before and had life-threatening injuries. Mr. Wright and his companion contacted the police station and stayed with the injured man until help arrived. For exemplary heroism in saving the life of a police officer, Mr. Josiah Wright.
And Mr. Wright is the companion of Winston Thorpe. So that companion that was referenced there by Faye Ellington was indeed Winston Thorpe. Together, they saved the life of that policeman found in Cedar Grove in St. Catherine and no doubt saved his life.
The Badge of Honor for Meritorious Service. The presentation of the Badge of Honor for Meritorious Service. Mr. Ian Jeffrey Allen. Mrs. Stacey Ann Marie Morlise Brown. Mr. Rudolph Alfonso Brown. Mr. Horace Oliver Clue. Mr. Donald St. Richard Bernard Daly. Ms. Gaynor Pamela Downer. And Mrs. Gloria Patricia Garrick Gibbs. Mr. Ian Jeffrey Allen for contribution to journalism as a photojournalist.
Ian Allen served the Gleaner Company Limited for 37 years. He was first employed in the library and would get tips from the photographers and practice on his pocket camera.
Mrs. Stacey Ann Marie Morlise Brown for service to the legal profession and the judiciary.
Stacey Ann Brown is credited with reorganizing the Court of Appeal to ensure greater efficiency in the operation of the court's registry.
Mr. Rudolph Alfonso Brown for contribution to journalism as a photojournalist.
Rudolph Brown started at the Gleaner Company 33 years ago. He has covered breaking news, numerous state visits, and even took shots in the eye of a hurricane aboard a Hurricane Hunter aircraft.
Mr. Horace Oliver Clue for contribution to sports and community development.
Oliver Clew has a distinction of being the first person to have coached schoolboy football teams in the Rural Area de Costa Cup title, the Manning Cup and the Olivier Shield, which determined schoolboy football supremacy across the island.
Mr. Donald St. Richard Bernard Daly, for service to the Jamaican diaspora in the United States of America in the area of communication.
Donald Daly makes the connection between Jamaica and South Florida through his company CRI Communications Incorporated. His radio show is a staple within the Caribbean community.
Miss Gaina Pamela Downer, for contribution to sports and community development.
Ms. Downer was the physiotherapist in charge of Jamaica's track and field teams to the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, the 2010 Commonwealth Games in Delhi, India, the 2003 World Champs in
Mrs.
France.
Gloria Patricia Garrick Gibbs, for long and dedicated service in the field of pharmacy and the health sector.
Mrs. Garrick Gibbs dedicated 48 years of service to the field of pharmacy. She served in the Ministry of Health and Wellness as well as the Pharmacy Council of Jamaica.
Miss Janet Elaine Henry, Miss Maxine Charmaine Jackson, Mrs. Leonie Beatrice Congal Gopal, Dr. Ephraim Malachi Martin, Lieutenant Colonel Trevor Heal McCurdy, Justice of the Peace, Mrs. Olive Parkin Smith, and Mrs. Marie Powell. Miss Janet Elaine Henry, for 35 years of outstanding and dedicated service to the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority.
Janet Henry's distinguished career at the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority spans 35 years. She is proud of her service, especially in the areas of recruitment and negotiation.
Ms. Maxine Charmaine Jackson, for contribution to the legal system of Jamaica at the public bar.
Maxine Jackson has given over 34 years of service to the public bar. She was instrumental in establishing Jamaica's mutual legal assistance networks in Europe, the US, and in Canada.
Mrs. Leonie Beatrice Congal Gopal, for service to the agricultural sector.
Leonie Gopal began her service with the Jamaica Agricultural Society in 1967. She served as typist, librarian, and executive secretary during her tenure.
Dr. Ephraim Malachi Martin, for philanthropic service.
Dr. Martin and his wife, retired Justice Shelvin Hall of the Illinois Appellate Court, started the Black Heroes Matter Coalition. With a group of 80 organizations, elected officials, media houses, and faith-based leaders, Dr. Martin led a successful 4th of July rally and march in 2020.
Lieutenant Colonel Trevor O'Neill McCurdy, Justice of the Peace, for service to the Jamaica Combined Cadet Force.
Lieutenant Colonel McCurdy has given over 40 years of service to the development of the nation's youth, combating antisocial and deviant behavior and molding young people into model citizens through the
Mrs. Olive
Cadet Force.
Parkin Smith, for outstanding contribution to the Jamaican diaspora in Canada.
Mrs. Parkin Smith migrated to Canada in the 1970s, where she began giving back to her community and fellow Jamaicans.
Mrs. Marie Powell, for service in the area of volunteerism and community service. Mrs. Powell is unable to be present. The medal will be received by her son, Dr. Alexander Powell.
Mrs. Powell's son here receiving an award for her 30 years of community service in the areas of healthcare, education, and youth. No doubt Marie Powell has had a significant impact through her work as a volunteer, improving the lives of children for over 16 years while serving as a member of Rotary International, which is a humanitarian service organization.
Now we move to the next group. Mrs. Janet Annetta Richards, Mr. Glaister Anthony Ricketts, Dr. Barbara Antoinette Salmon Grandison, Mr. Colin Barrington Smith, Mrs. Pauline Delores Stevenson, Mr. Derek Adolphus Stewart, Mr. Jeremy Christopher Taylor, King's Counsel, Dr. Princess Marie Vinola Thomas Osborne. Mrs. Janet Annetta Richards, Justice of the Peace for notable community development.
An accomplished banker, Ms. Janet Richards is a passionate mentor to physically challenged children and seniors. She's currently the chairman of Janet Richards Foundation, a dream she was able to fulfill after leaving Scotiabank Jamaica Limited.
Mr. Glaister Anthony Ricketts, Justice of the Peace, for outstanding contribution to the energy sector.
Mr. Ricketts is a professional engineer and managing director of GAR Engineering Company, which provides mechanical engineering services to the mining, electricity, energy, and manufacturing
Dr. Barbara
sectors.
Antoinette Salmon Grandison, for notable service to the public health sector.
Dr. Grandison is an associate lecturer at the University of the West Indies. She single-handedly developed and pioneered the ENT department of the Cornwall Regional Hospital.
Mr. Colin Barrington Smith, for outstanding contribution to preserving Jamaica's traditional folk culture and indigenous music.
Colin Smith is president of the Louise Bennett Coverley Heritage Council, a charitable organization in Florida dedicated to the dissemination and preservation of Jamaica's cultural heritage.
Mrs. Pauline Delores Stevenson, Justice of the Peace, for 40 years of distinguished service to education.
Mrs. Stevenson received the Prime Minister's Medal of Appreciation for Service to Education in 2002 and won the Jamaica Teachers Association Golden Torch Award in 2003.
Mr. Derek Adolfo Stewart, for over 40 years of service to the music industry and education.
Mr. Stewart is a lecturer in the Drums and Percussion Department at the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts. He was the first drummer to perform at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in Kingston, doing nightly cabaret
Mr. Jeremy
shows.
Christopher Taylor, King's Counsel, for contribution to the legal system of Jamaica at the public bar.
Mr. Taylor has dedicated more than 23 years of service to the public bar as a prosecutor. He was elevated to the rank of Queen's Counsel in 2020. Over the years, he has been instrumental in prosecuting high-profile matters, as well as making recommendations for legislative
Dr. Vinola
reform.
Thomas Osborne, for outstanding contribution to the field of pharmacy, drug regulation.
Dr. Osborne has given outstanding contribution to the field of pharmacy. Currently, she's a consultant in the Ministry of Health's Pharmaceutical and Standards and Regulations Division.
Ms. Winsome Antoinette Van Horn Christie. Dr. Clive Leopold Williams, Mr. Desmond Young. Ms. Winsome Antoinette Van Horn Christie, for loyal and outstanding service to the public sector.
Winsome Van Horn Christie has served the public service with distinction for 42 years. A communication specialist at the Ministry of National Security, she also served at the Ministries of Water and Housing and Economic Growth and Job Creation.
To the Jamaican diaspora in the United States of America.
Dr. Williams served the New York community as a family therapist and counselor for over 15 years. He recently founded Jamaicanomics, a social enterprise corporation to focus on curating the achievements and expanding the potential
Mr.
of Jamaicans
Desmond Young,
at
for
home and
outstanding
abroad.
contribution to the energy sector.
Desmond Young has given over 18 years of outstanding service to the energy sector. He's a registered civil engineer with more than 26 years of experience in the implementation of projects in Jamaica, in Russia, in the US, China, and Israel.
Members of the Badge of Honor for Meritorious Service. Honorary Award for Dr. Samuel Berlinski Robinson Davis, for dedicated service as Honorary Consul of Jamaica in Colombia. Dr. Robinson Davis is unable to be with us this morning. Mr. Alan Edward Toulon, member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, for notable contribution to the history of Jamaica. Mr. Alan Toulon is unable to be present today. The Badge of Honor for Long and Faithful Service. The presentation of the Badge of Honor for Long and Faithful Service, District Constable Magnus Anderson. District Constable Barrington Alwyn Bogle, Woman District Constable Pamela Boyne, Mr. Wesley Oliver Brooks, Miss Suzette Angela Campbell South, Reverend Enoch Sanford Cornwall, Mr. Charles Henry Crooks, and Mrs. Melverlyn da Costa Lynch. District Constable Magnus Anderson for sterling service of 38 years as a District Constable in the St. Andrews South Division.
District Constable Anderson has served the Hunts Bay Police Station in St. Andrews South since his appointment in October 1983.
District Constable Barrington Alwyn Bogle for over 30 years of sterling service as a District Constable in the Kingston Central Division.
Throughout his tenure, D.C. Bogle has performed his duties at a very high standard. He's never been brought before the court to answer any charge of or
Woman
complaints.
District Constable Pamela Boyne for sterling service of 31 years as a District Constable in the Amity Hall Division of St. James.
D.C. Bowen is deeply
Mr.
involved
Wesley
in community
Oliver
development.
Brooks for over 33 years of distinguished public service.
A well-respected gentleman, a trusted bearer for the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Miss Suzette Angela Campbell South for over 40 years of service to education.
Suzette Campbell South served as a classroom teacher, primary school principal, and research supervisor at the college level between 1981 and 2014.
Reverend Enoch Sanford Cornwall for 60 years of distinguished service to religion.
Bishop Cornwall is a dynamic minister of religion, a counselor, marriage officer, and author. He served as pastor to 39 churches across the island and overseer for 4 parishes.
Mr. Charles Henry Crooks for over 50 years of distinguished service to national development.
Charles Crooks has been chairman of Jamaica Electrical and Mechanical Engineers Limited since 1972.
Mrs. Melverlyn da Costa Lynch for public service and community service.
Mrs. Lynch is an office attendant in the Office of the Prime Minister who has served in the public sector for 22 years, known for going above and beyond the call of duty.
And now, Mrs. Theda Elsa Faulkner Brooks, District Constable Norman Washington Fraser, Mr. Dudley Samuel Graham, Mr. Kurt Anthony Green, Miss Ivy May Elter Hill, Mrs. Blossom Dane Hode, Mrs. Nova Casita Johnson, Woman District Constable Valerie Lawrence. Mrs. Theda Elsa Faulkner Brooks for 36 years of service to education.
Mrs. Brooks has been a bursar at Clarendon College for the past 26 years, and prior to that, she served at the Elim Agricultural School, now Sydney
District
Pagan High.
Constable Norman Washington Fraser for sterling service of 37 years as a District Constable in the Belfield Division of St. Mary.
D.C. Fraser has provided sterling service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force, serving his community as a mentor and mediator and aids in community development through several charitable initiatives.
Mr. Dudley Samuel Graham for over 40 years of service to community development.
Dudley Graham has served the tourism industry as a tour bus operator. He's been the organizer, director, and coordinator of Christian Chiropractor Association short-term mission trips to Jamaica.
Mr. Kurt Anthony Green for over 38 years of long and faithful service to aviation.
Kurt Green served the Air Navigation Services Division with distinction. For almost 40 years, the former air traffic controller was among the first set of radar controllers in Jamaica.
Miss Ivy May Elter Hill, Justice of the Peace, for outstanding contribution to politics and community development.
Miss Hill has been the community organizer in Jonestown and constituency secretary in the Trafalgar Park and Nannyville communities for more
Mrs.
than
Blossom
30
Dane
years.
Hode, for long and dedicated service in the Girls' Brigade in Jamaica for over 52 years.
Mrs. Hode became an officer in the Girls' Brigade at the age of 23 and was captain of the Daviton Company, commandant of Manchester
Mrs. Nova
District.
Casita Johnson, for long and outstanding service in the field of tourism and community service.
Mrs. Johnson served the tourism sector for 51 years as an executive housekeeper. During her tenure, she was a National Workers' Union, Edelgate, lobbying for improving working conditions
Woman
for
District
hotel workers.
Constable Valerie Lawrence, for sterling service of 36 years as a district constable in the Kingston Western Division.
D.C. Lawrence was appointed to the Admiral Town Police in Western Kingston in 1986.
And now, Mrs. Laura Maud Levy, Mrs. Luna Elaine Matthews, Mrs. Herma Cynthia McPherson, Ms. Karen Gail Miller, Mrs. Sandra Vern Miller Hall, Mr. Arlington Sylvester Myers Sr., District Constable Nigel Anthony Parks, and District Constable Lester Reed.
Members of the JDF this morning provided some support, providing support.
Mrs. Laura Maud Levy, Justice of the Peace, for 38 years of dedicated service to education and community service.
Mrs. Levy served as a classroom teacher and guidance counselor before being promoted to vice principal and later acting principal at the St. Thomas Technical High
Mrs.
School.
Luna Elaine Matthews, for service in the field of education for over 40 years. Ms. Luna Matthews is unable to be present. The medal will be collected by her daughter, Mrs. Marcia Matthews Cohen.
Luna Matthews' daughter collecting an award there for her service to education. She was an educator at the Red Hills Primary and All-Age School, where she served for more than 40 years.
Mrs. Herma Cynthia McPherson, for exemplary service and commitment to the development of Jamaica's education sector.
Mrs. McPherson served in education for 38 years as a teacher and principal of the Whitehall Primary School in St. Thomas. She's the 2016 recipient of the Principal's Award for Quality Education Circle in St. Thomas.
Ms. Karen Gail Miller, for over 33 years of distinguished public service.
Ms. Miller has served the Bureau of Standards Jamaica for more than 33 years and made significant contributions to the organization's Quality Institute, Packaging and Microbiology branches.
Mrs. Sandra Vern Miller Hall, for community development.
Sandra Miller Hall is an ambassador for the Governor General's I Believe initiative, which has provided support in the form of food, clothing and shelter to many persons in need.
Mr. Arlington Sylvester Myers Sr., for philanthropy.
Arlington Myers has been assisting the less fortunate for the past 21 years. He was instrumental in getting urgent overseas medical assistance for at least 2 persons, renovating his alma mater, Brinkley Basic School, and helping to purchase books for several persons in need. In 2015, during a drought, he helped to purchase water for individuals in his neighborhood.
Nigel Anthony Parks, for sterling service of 38 years as a district constable in the Watttown Division of St. Anne.
District Constable Parks was assigned to the Watttown Police in St. Anne on October 22, 1984.
District Constable Lester Reed, for sterling service of 32 years as a district constable in the Trinityville Division of St. Thomas.
District Constable Reed began his service in the Trinityville Police Division in 1989.
And now, Mr. Kenneth Albert Rose, Mrs. Claudette Rose Taylor Gale, Miss Ava Michelle Tomlinson, Mr. Carlton Vernal White, Mr. Delroy Augustus Williams, Mrs. Patience Dolores Williams.
And again, we see here another member of the JDF supporting a recipient who needs additional help to come forward and to receive his award.
Mr. Kenneth Albert Rose for outstanding contribution to community development.
Mr. Rose has been a pillar of support in the Roehampton community in St. James since 1947.
Mrs.
Truly
Claudette Rose Taylor Gale for outstanding contribution to the health sector.
Mrs. Taylor Gale served the public health care sector for over 46 years. She was employed to the Savlamar Hospital from 1977
Ms.
until
Ava
she
Michelle
retired in
Tomlinson
2011.
for long and faithful community service.
Ava Tomlinson has been serving the Longville Park community for 23 years, spearheading the upgrade of the Longville Park Phase 2 Community Centre Healthy Zone with
Mr. Carlton
installation of a
Vernal
jogging
White
trail.
for outstanding and faithful contribution to the public service.
Carlton White has served the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation with distinction for the past 49 years.
Mr. Delroy Augustus Williams for outstanding contribution to religious music. Mr. Delroy Williams is unable to be present this morning. The medal will be collected by his son, Mr. Adrian Williams.
Adrian Williams receiving that award for his father, Delroy Williams, who has served 37 years at the Portmore Chorale, which he co-founded with the late Trevor Brown in 1985.
Mrs. Patience Dolores Williams for over 40 years of dedicated service to education and community development. Mrs. Williams is unable to be present this morning. The medal will be collected by her son, Dr. Roger Williams.
Dr. Williams receiving that award for his mother, Patience Williams, who began her teaching career at Sawyers Elementary School in 1959, has had a very long career in education in St. James and in many other places, teaching at Tower Hill, All Age, Anchovy Primary School.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Dr. Myrna Haig Bradshaw, better known as Myrna Haig, and popularly referred to as Jamaica's First Lady of Jazz, is a Jamaican lovers rock and jazz singer and an actress. Dr. Haig founded the Oterious Jazz Festival with her husband, jazz musician Sonny Bradshaw, and continues to organize the festival. She's toured internationally, most recently as guest vocalist with Jazz Jamaica and as part of Women in Jazz and the Jamaica Big Band. The multifaceted Myrna Haig is a member of the board of the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission. She holds a doctorate in cultural studies from the University of the West Indies for her thesis examining jazz in the Caribbean, and is a former tutor at the Jamaica School of Music. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Myrna Haig Bradshaw, who received an Order of Distinction in the rank of officer this morning. She's accompanied by Amardo Blake performing To Dream the Impossible Dream.
the amazing Myrna Haig Bradshaw, Jamaica's first Lady of Jazz, delivering a beautiful rendition
Dr.
of To
Myrna
Dream
Haig,
the
accompanied
Impossible
by,
Dream.
Mardo Blake, To Dream the Impossible Dream. His Excellency the Governor General, acting in accordance with the provisions of the relevant regulations made under Section 7 of the National Honors and Awards Act, has been pleased to award the Medal of Honor with effect from the 6th day of August 2022 to the following members of the uniformed services. Medal of Honor for Gallantry. Presentation of the Medal of Honor for Gallantry. Sergeant Leon Fisher. The officer demonstrated dedication, commitment, and extraordinary courage in circumstances of extreme danger as he pursued a suspect who was considered Jamaica's most wanted man and who was heavily armed during an operation in St. James on the 28th of April 2018. Even though injured by the suspect, Sergeant Fisher made conscious decisions and supported the team throughout the operations, including using his body as a human shield to safely remove persons, including an 18-month-old baby, from nearby apartments. Sergeant Leon Fisher.
What an inspirational story. This young man, Sergeant Fisher, putting himself on the line, putting his life in danger, injured, and still having the presence of mind to carry out his duties above and beyond the call of duty, I must say.
Constable Kevin Lords. The officer demonstrated dedication, commitment, and extraordinary courage in circumstances of extreme danger as he pursued a suspect who was considered Jamaica's most wanted man and who was heavily armed during an operation in St. James on the 28th of April 2018. In an attempt to extract a team member, Constable Lords placed himself in the firing line. His ballistic helmet and vest were shot and damaged when he joined the effective response to repel the attack on the team, including joining with the members using their bodies as a human shield to safely remove persons, including an 18-month-old baby, from nearby apartments. Constable Kevin Lewis.
Constable Lewis comes forward to receive a well-deserved award, recognition for his courage, for his bravery, putting his life on the line to save others. The badge of honor for gallantry.
His Excellency the Governor General, acting in accordance with the provisions of the relevant regulations made under Section 7 of the National Honors and Awards Act, has been pleased to award the Medal of Honor with effect from the 23rd day of May, 2022 to the following members of the uniformed services. The Medal of Honor for Meritorious Service. Presentation of the Medal of Honor for Meritorious Service. Jamaica Defence Force. Brigadier Markland Aloysius Lloyd. Warrant Officer Class 1 Christopher Livingston Allen. Warrant Officer 1 Robert Anthony Silence. And Sergeant Dwayne Augustus Clayton. Sergeant Clayton is unable to be present this morning. Brigadier Markland Aloysius Lloyd.
Brigadier Lloyd, receiving a Medal of Honor for Meritorious Service, having served the Jamaica Defence Force for 28 years.
Warrant Officer Class 1, Christopher Livingston Allen.
Warrant Officer 1, Christopher Allen, receiving an award for 32 years of service to the JDF.
Warrant Officer Class 1, Robert Anthony Silence.
Warrant Officer 1, Robert Silence, receiving a Medal of Honor for Meritorious Service to the JDF for 27 years.
The Jamaica Constabulary Force. Senior Superintendent of Police Paulette Patricia Green. Senior Sup Green is unable to be present this morning. Senior Superintendent of Police Clive Lloyd Walker. Senior Superintendent of Police Merrick Anthony Watson. Superintendent of Police Lloyd George Darby. Superintendent of Police Cleo St. Patrick Ellis. Superintendent of Police Leighton Gary Gray. Superintendent of Police Jacqueline Patricia Henry. Superintendent of Police Samuel Augustus Morgan. Superintendent of Police Eglon George Samuels.
Resplendent in their ceremonial uniforms this morning, members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Senior Superintendent of Police Clive Lloyd A. Walker.
Senior Superintendent Walker receiving his award for meritorious service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force for 34 years.
Senior Superintendent of Police Merrick Anthony Watson.
SSP Watson, with 31 years of service under his belt.
Superintendent of Police Lloyd George Darby.
SSP Lloyd Darby, among the members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, receiving an award for meritorious service this morning.
Superintendent of Police Cleo St. Patrick Ellis.
Superintendent Cleo Ellis receiving his award. Bright smile there and a warm exchange with the Governor General. 34 years of service under his belt.
Superintendent of Police Leighton Gary Gray.
Superintendent Leighton Gray receiving his award for 35 years of meritorious service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Superintendent of Police Jacqueline Patricia Henry.
Superintendent Jacqueline Henry stepping forward to receive a much-deserved Medal of Honor for meritorious service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Superintendent of Police Samuel Augustus Morgan.
A large cheering party for Superintendent Samuel Morgan, having served the JCF for 35 years, receiving his award this morning.
Superintendent of Police Eglon George Samuels.
Superintendent Eglon George Samuels, receiving an award for 34 years of meritorious service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Superintendent of Police Howard Alexander Simmons, Superintendent of Police Beresford Bernardo Williams, Deputy Superintendent of Police Linton James Bailey, Deputy Superintendent of Police Marlene Isabel Bailey, Deputy Superintendent of Police Horace Luarls Forbes, Deputy Superintendent of Police Donald Wayne Francis, Deputy Superintendent of Police Radcliffe Ivan Gordon, Deputy Superintendent of Police Leighton Ford Blackstock. Superintendent of Police Howard Alexander Simmons.
Superintendent Simmons has served the JCF for 35 years.
Superintendent of Police Beresford Bernardo Williams.
Superintendent Williams, with 37 years of service to the JCF.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Linton James Bailey.
Deputy Superintendent Linton Bailey has served the JCF for 38 years.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Marlene Isabel Bailey.
DSP Marlene Bailey, with 28 years of service to her credit, receiving an award for meritorious service this morning.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Horace Luarls Forbes.
Deputy Superintendent Horace Forbes, receiving an award for his 31 years of service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Donald Wayne Francis.
DSP Donald Francis, a very tall gentleman, receiving his award for 33 years of service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Radcliffe Ivan Gordon.
Deputy Superintendent Radcliffe Gordon, receiving an award for 18 years of service to the JCF.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Leighton Ford Blackstock.
DSP Leighton Blackstock, receiving an award for his 38 years of service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Lola Green Blake. Deputy Superintendent of Police St. George Jackson, Deputy Superintendent of Police Angela Maureen McIntosh Gale, Deputy Superintendent of Police Elaine Steer, Deputy Superintendent of Police Warren Anthony Williams, Assistant Superintendent of Police Patrice Ruel Dua, Assistant Superintendent of Police Patsy Angela Wallen Lindsay.
So good to see members of our security forces, our uniformed groups, who serve this country with distinction in many instances, in less than ideal
Superintendent
circumstances.
Of Police Lola Green Blake.
Deputy Superintendent Lola Green Blake has served the Jamaica Constabulary Force for 32 years.
Deputy Superintendent of Police St. George Jackson.
DSP St. George Jackson has served the JCF for 25 years.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Angela Maureen McIntosh Gale.
DSP Angela McIntosh Gale, with a very loud cheering party this morning, celebrating her as she receives an award for 29 years of meritorious service to the JCF.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Elaine Stair.
DSP Elaine Stair receiving that award for 34 years of service to the JCF.
Deputy Superintendent of Police Warren Anthony Williams.
Deputy Superintendent Williams, with 21 years of service, receiving an award this morning.
Assistant Superintendent of Police Patrice Roel Dua.
Assistant Superintendent Patrice Roel Dua, 28 years of service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Assistant Superintendent of Police Patsy Angela Wallen Lindsay.
Assistant Superintendent Patsy Wallen Lindsay has given 32 years of yeoman service to the Jamaica Constabulary Force, receiving a much-deserved award this morning.
Department of Correctional Services. Overseer Errol Anthony Blackwood, Overseer Basil Seymour Gilmore, Overseer Howard Bernard Henderson, Overseer Derek Anthony Hunter, Overseer Paris St. Patrick Lawrence, Overseer Eileen Carroll Officer, Overseer Horace Lee Thompson. Overseer Errol Anthony Blackwood.
Overseer Errol Blackwood, 32 years of service to the Department of Correctional Services.
Overseer Basil Seymour Gilmore.
Overseer Gilmore has given 35 years of service to the Department of Correctional Services, receiving an award for meritorious service this morning.
Overseer Howard Bernard Henderson. Overseer Derek Anthony
Howard
Hunter.
Henderson. Overseer Hunter, another member of the Department of Correctional Services, who has given 32 years of service.
Overseer Paris St. Patrick Lawrence.
Overseer Lawrence has given 39 years of service to the Department of Correctional Services.
Overseer Eileen Carroll Officer.
Overseer Eileen Officer, 35 years of service to the Correctional Services Department.
Overseer Horace Lee Thompson.
Horace Lee Thompson, another member of the Department of Correctional Services, who was given many years of service, 39 years in fact.
We continue with the Department of Correctional Services. Staff Officer Wayne St. Patrick Brown, Staff Officer Michael Anthony Byfield, Staff Officer Alfred Kenneth Calder, Staff Officer Desmond Washington Chambers, Staff Officer Roderick George Ferguson, Staff Officer Desmond Alfonso Henry. Staff Officer Wayne St. Patrick Brown.
Staff Officer Wayne Brown, receiving an award for 34 years of service to the Department of Correctional Services.
Staff Officer Michael Anthony Byfield.
Staff Officer Byfield, 31 years of service, receiving a medal this morning.
Staff Officer Alfred Kenneth Calder.
Medal of Honor also for Staff Officer Alfred Calder, who was given 30 years of service to the Correctional Services Department.
Staff Officer Desmond Washington Chambers.
Desmond Chambers has given 32 years of service.
Staff Officer Roderick George Ferguson.
35 years of service from Staff Officer Roderick Ferguson.
Staff Officer Desmond Alfonso Henry.
Desmond Henry, another member of the Department of Correctional Services who has given more than 30 years of service.
Final group from the Correctional Services, Staff Officer Sidney Garfield Manhertz, Staff Officer Angela Marie Morris, and Staff Officer George Patrick War.
These are the final three members of the Department of Correctional Services who will be receiving their Medals of Honor for Meritorious Service.
Staff Officer Sidney Garfield Manhertz.
Staff Officer Sidney Manhertz, with 35 years of service, receiving his award.
Staff Officer Angela Marie Morris.
And Staff Officer Angela Morris, 26 years of service to her credit, receiving congratulations from the Governor General.
Staff Officer George Patrick War.
Staff Officer George Wall, having given 32 years of service to the Correctional Services Department, receiving his medal for meritorious service.
And now the Jamaica Fire Brigade for their medals for meritorious service. Superintendent Gary Anthony Morgan. Superintendent Morgan is unable to be present this morning. Deputy Superintendent Ron O'Neill Powell, Assistant Superintendent Ronald David Blissett, Assistant Superintendent William Alexander Dixon, Assistant Superintendent Garnet Alton Dowse, Assistant Superintendent Damian Carl Johnson, Assistant Superintendent Royal Enix Knight, Assistant Superintendent Wade Alistair McDermott, Assistant Superintendent Donovan McLaren. Assistant Superintendent McLaren is unable to be present this morning. Assistant Superintendent Everett Claude Montague.
The first group of members from the Jamaica Fire Brigade who are here to receive their Medal of Honor for meritorious service.
Deputy Superintendent Ron O'Neill Powell.
Deputy Superintendent Powell has served the Jamaica Fire Brigade for 23 years.
Assistant Superintendent Ronald David Blissett.
Assistant Superintendent Blissett, 24 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Assistant Superintendent William Alexander Dixon.
Assistant Superintendent William Dixon. A very loud cheering party here for him, receiving his award for 31 years of service.
Assistant Superintendent Garnet Alton Dowse.
Assistant Superintendent Garnet Dowse, 26 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Assistant Superintendent Damian Carl Johnson.
Assistant Superintendent Johnson, 27 years of service to the Fire Brigade.
Assistant Superintendent Worrell Enix Knight.
Another member of the Jamaica Fire Brigade being recognized for 27 years of service, Assistant Superintendent Worrell Knight.
Assistant Superintendent Wade Alistair McDermott.
Assistant Superintendent McDermott being recognized for 25 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Assistant Superintendent Everett Claude Montague.
Assistant Superintendent Everett Montague, 26 years of service as well.
Assistant Superintendent Anthony Neal. Assistant Superintendent Michael Roy Patterson. Assistant Superintendent Sandy Teresa Shaw Dawson. Assistant Superintendent Michael George Tomlinson. District Officer Mavita Cheryl Bailey Hall. District Officer Glanville Anthony Blake. And District Officer Paul Roosevelt Blair.
The second group of members from the Jamaica Fire Brigade. And the Jamaica Fire Brigade is the final group of uniformed personnel who will be receiving awards this morning.
Anthony Neal.
Assistant Superintendent Neal here receiving his award for 26 years of service.
Assistant Superintendent Michael Roy Patterson.
Assistant Superintendent Patterson, celebrated for 25 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Assistant Superintendent Sandy Teresa Shaw Dawson.
Assistant Superintendent Sandy Shaw Dawson, 27 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Assistant Superintendent Michael George Tomlinson.
Assistant Superintendent Michael Tomlinson receiving his award for 26 years of service to the Fire Brigade.
District Officer Mavita Cheryl Bailey Hall.
District Officer Mavita Bailey Hall, 27 years of service.
District Officer Glanville Anthony Blake.
For his 32 years of service, District Officer Glanville Blake receives his Medal of Honor for meritorious service.
District Officer Paul Roosevelt Blair.
District Officer Blair, 27 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
District Officer Dervin Elijah Brown, District Officer Anne-Marie Cope, District Officer Philip Roger Grindley, District Officer Junior Anthony Harris, District Officer Aston Junior Nelson, District Officer Howard Satarvin Nemhard, District Officer Allison Andrea Richards, District Officer Garrett St. Aubin Hall Russell. District Officer Russell is unable to be present this morning.
We're almost at the end of these awards, the National Honors and Awards 2022, the ceremony of investiture and presentation here at King's House.
District Officer Dervin Elijah Brown.
District Officer Dervin Brown, for his 32 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade, receiving his Medal of Honor.
District Officer Anne-Marie Cope.
District Officer Cope, for 27 years of service.
District Officer Philip Roger Grindley.
District Officer Philip Grindley, receiving an award for 32 years of service.
District Officer Junior Anthony Harris.
District Officer Junior Harris, with 27 years of service under his belt, receiving his Medal of Honor.
District Officer Aston Junior Nelson.
District Officer Aston Nelson, receiving an award for his 26 years of service.
District Officer Howard Satarvin Nemhard.
District Officer Nemhard, 32 years of service to the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
District Officer Allison Andrea Richards.
District Officer Allison Andrea Richards, 27 years of service.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the presentation of the 2022 National Honors and Awards Ceremony of Investiture. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem.
Be
children, please remain standing. Please remain standing for the departures of their Excellencies, the Governor General and the Most Honorable Lady Allen.
And with that, we get ready to close this broadcast of the 2022 Ceremony of Investiture and Presentation of National Honors and Awards. We have been coming to you live from King's House. It is, of course, National Heroes Day, a wonderful tradition that means so much, not just to Jamaicans who receive these national honors and awards every year.
The Prime Minister and the Most Honorable Mrs. Holness will be making their way over to the recipients to greet them. We're asking that guests remain in their seats so the Prime Minister can greet the recipients in an orderly fashion. Guests should also refrain from impeding movement to the ceremonial platform in the event that photographs will be taken until the dignitaries depart the area. We hope that you'll assist us in cooperating with this.
And some instructions there from the altar this morning. Much of these presentations you would have seen taken. Order of distinction, officer class. Closes out. Let me also say thank you again to Anthony Bacon, who provided support, sign language support this morning on screen for our viewers, members of the hearing impaired community. And the production of this morning's presentation, the television production, has been led and managed by the Jamaican Information Service, the television department. JIS under the leadership of the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Ms. the Prime Minister greeting Emmy Award winning actress Cheryl Ralph as the Prime Minister goes through that area of recipients, greeting them and no doubt congratulating them. It has indeed been a wonderful morning. Being together, these awards have been done virtually over the last 2 years. So this is the first time since 2019 we are back at King's House, being able to see each other and to really give the kind of support that our award recipients deserve. Standing by to close out this broadcast, we have been coming to you live from King's House in St. Andrew in Kingston, Jamaica. It is, of course, Heroes Day, so if you missed my greeting, my wish at the start of this broadcast, Happy Heroes Day to Jamaicans here and abroad, those watching on GIS's website, gis.gov.jm. We have been bringing the presentation, the investiture ceremony to you. It has indeed been my pleasure to provide commentary and to share additional insights here from King's House. So we're standing by to do a couple of interviews. Our producer is trying to see if he can get a couple of the awardees. Interviews here. It is a little bit of a the Prime Minister continues to greet Mrs. Holness, I might add.
I pledge my heart this island as God and faith shall live. My work, my strength, my love.
We see the Prime Minister there greeting recipient of an award this morning. There were 221 recipients this morning.